Podcast. This episode brought to you by coffee. $1 for a large, can't go wrong. So, save the world, save your mind. Now check this out. If you want to save the world, you got to work on your mind. What you put into it, eating, absorbing, thoughts, conversation, life, general, repeat. Now, kind of an abstract concept. So basically, to save the world, take care of your brain. Instead of recreationally getting messed up and doing drugs and drinking, make your mind better by learning something new and, improving. Basically, work hard on making your brain better. And then so if everybody's brain's better, it'll help the world in the future. And if you teach people to constantly nourish their mind, then we should fix the world, because then everybody won't be nuts, messing stuff up, and have humanity and all that other good stuff. Think about the concept of remorse. I was hearing about that dude who did the Parkland murders, and he was talking about, I'm so sorry, I have nightmares, I know you don't believe me. But the minute somebody says, oh, I know you don't believe me, they don't believe themselves. They'll never trust a guy who says, trust me. But you begin to think like, okay, so this dude woke up one day and went and he killed 17 people. I think injured another 17. He's getting charged with 34 counts of murder. I don't know. And 17 people are dead. He says he did it. He says he's sorry. Now they're trying to find a jury. But we're at point remorseful. I mean, if he is truly remorseful, where does that go in the pecking order? It's like, dude, this guy doesn't count because what he did, which makes sense. But like, you look at like religions, thou shalt forgive, and that's such an atrocity. And he's like okay with the death penalty. He's like, let the families decide. It's so bizarre. So obviously, being remorseful is like number one. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody doing anything atrocious like that and truly saying they're sorry, or at least having audio of them, like, oh, I'm totally sorry. I remember thinking, like Ted Bundy, like denied it till the end. I think Richard Ramirez, same deal. Jeffrey Dahmer, I don't think he cared. He was just insane. Those are serial killers, but I mean, this dude's body count was in that range, so it's just weird. Like remorse in general, obviously you got to have it as part of humanity and you need it to keep going, but like, what does that do for the victims? What does that do for society? At least he knows he did something wrong. I don't know. It's super bizarre. I mean, it's sometimes hard to be remorseful depending on what it is. And this is such a big deal. I mean, he's taking lives for no reason, really. And I mean, all those people I named took lives for no reason, really. So, but like, okay, he's says he's remorseful, and if he really is, how does that affect anything? And if he's just saying he is because he needs to say he is to do whatever, it's a weird game. Reading, writing, creating, indulging in people and situations and activities, nature, meditation. That's, I think, the key here. Like, if those guys had those types of hobbies, maybe they wouldn't have done what they did. I don't know. I'll never know. And I'm just rambling at this point, so keep it going. Watched a movie this time. Misconduct. This is a good one. It's like a thriller. I think it's done by a Korean guy. I'm trying to see here. But dude, what a cast. Al Pacino, Anthony Hopkins. It's almost like a Hitchcock, like whodunit, and then you just find out at the end who murdered who, and it's like insane. You never thought it was them. But definitely a good one. Kind of found it, never knew existed. But just looking at that cast, you're like, dude, what's going on? So this is the first movie those two had ever worked together. And they're pros. Obviously, they're super good at what they do. So it's got to be good. But the story's really good, and it's kind of twisty, turny thriller, which we like. And I've been reading all week, pretty much nonstop, dude. Like, it's hard sometimes to knock out books this big. But this thing was amazing. Young Castro. this is a book of the making of a revolutionary. The autobiography of Fidel Castro when he was young. And it's such a good read. I'm not too familiar with Fidel. Like, obviously you see him and you know, like, he's kind of like an enemy of the state. You know, the states don't like him. And in this book, the author in the foreword kind of says, you know, hey, I know you might have a preconceived notion of this, but just take this as a man and take away all your preconceived notions, which I tried to do. And he's quite incredible. I mean, basically, he was charged with murder at one point for starting a riot and got like 26 years. He was out within 2 years, but during that time, he just read and read and read. So when you're reading a book about a guy who read a bunch, it's kind of, you know, wow, okay, cool. Like, here we are. But he got exiled from Cuba because of that. And he was a lawyer, and he kind of grew up with money, you know, compared to other people in Cuba. And he really wanted what was right. He believed in the Constitution that was not being, you know, implemented by those in power. And, you know, like, they assassinated his people when they were captured and just like this crazy stuff. So he gets exiled. He goes to Mexico. He meets Che Guevara. And they get on a boat built for, I want to say 8 people, and they take like 80 people back to Cuba, and they crash land, and basically 14 people get out, and they go to the mountains and freaking have a revolution, dude. They fight them. They fight the government, you know, military war style, guerrilla style, from the mountains of Cuba. And essentially, after a few years, the president left. He packed his bags and he bailed, and they won. So it's interesting that, like, you know, I mean, he did it for the people. He wanted the economy, and his love of the country, and, you know, almost like a George Washington type story. But then, like, America hates him, right? So he didn't want to play ball, or basically he asked for a loan and they didn't give it to him, so he had to go to Russia, and then they labeled him a communist. But constantly he's like anti-communism. But while he was in jail, he did read a bunch of Marx books. So it's kind of weird when you think of how they think of him, who he is, what he's done. I kind of heard that the people of Cuba never liked him or didn't like him towards the end because he had power for so long, but I don't know. Like, it's just all like, I remember hearing before, I thought it was like 7 dudes took over the government, like they went in the Capitol, and like, but it was not that at all. I don't know where I heard that, but obviously that did not go on. But it's really interesting. Obviously revolutionary, in the fact of, you believe in something so much you can make a change, and that's what this country was built on. And he did it. I mean, he did it, and he never griped about it, and he made do with what he was. He was kind of pushed in, I think, to communism just because he was cut off from the rest of the world. But it doesn't really go into that. It just goes into young. It basically goes from like the 40s, or when he was a kid, in the 30s, until like 1978, and that was the year I was born. So I don't know what. I mean, I don't know anything besides what this book told me, and everything I thought I knew was inaccurate. That being said, try your hardest. Read more books. Stay amazing. Be humble. Be gracious. Have gratitude. Be remorseful. Feed your brain. Podcast. G-Myth.